Hello, and thank you for joining this live webinar presented by the Cisco Learning Network. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Cisco Learning Network, and information on how to access the recording will be emailed to you following the live session. Please allow up to 5 business days for the full recording to be made available. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation. Hello, and thank you for joining this live webinar presented by the Cisco Learning Network. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Cisco Learning Network, and information on how to access the recording will be emailed to you following the live session. Please allow up to 5 business days for the full recording to be made available. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation. Hello, and thank you for joining this live webinar presented by the Cisco Learning Network. This webinar will be recorded and made available on the Cisco Learning Network, and information on how to access the recording will be emailed to you following the live session. Please allow up to 5 business days for the full recording to be made available. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Carlo Bobilis, and I will be your moderator for today's session. But before I hand over Mike, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover about today's presentation. Today's session will be presented by Security Solutions Architect and Cisco Press author Hank Hensel. Today's session will also be recorded and made available on demand after. We'll make sure to provide some details at the end. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation, so if you are on WebEx and have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the WebEx question and answer panel, where our wonderful panelists are ready to respond. And then for those tuning into our live stream, thank you very much for joining in as well. Q&A is limited to those via WebEx. However, we will have a post-event Q&A thread on the Cisco Learning Network where you can post any follow-up questions. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Hank. Hank, over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Carlo. Again, my name is Hank Hensel. I'm a security solutions architect with Cisco Systems, and I am one of the co-authors of the Zero Trust Architecture book that was recently published last fall. Let's see. A little bit about myself. We start off with these for this context, just to give a little bit of background for ourselves. Again, I'm a security solutions architect, advisor, consultant, however you want to throw name titles at me. I've been with Cisco since 2015, though I have well over 34 years of IT experience and networking and security experience. I'm one of the very early CCIEs that's out there, the lower four digits. I have just a short list of industries that I've been involved with one way or the other. Industrial controls is one of my big focuses, though. but I've been involved quite a bit with healthcare, pharmaceuticals, chemical, transportation, all the way up to nuclear, green energy, solar, wind. Plus, I've done things in the public sector, including things with the DoD, the DOE, NRC, NATO. I do things with oil and gas, wet infrastructure. Might be easier to throw a list out there that's what I haven't been involved with, I guess, but I've done everything down to mozzarella cheese manufacturing that's probably used for about 90% of all the peaches in the U.S. But anyway, for myself personally, I enjoy quite a bit of gardening, travel when I can, and I do some automotive tinkering from here or there if it's vintage earlier than 1970. My picture here is a picture of London from St. Paul's Cathedral, overlooking more of the business district, I believe. Got the Shard and the Pickle Building in the background. Today I'm going to be discussing how vulnerability management can be enhanced and how it will be enhanced in the coming future as we involve and start incorporating artificial intelligence and its subset of machine learning to better leverage it, to better react with it, and to better fulfill the mission and intention of zero trust and the use of vulnerability management and how zero trust is achieved in normal networks moving forward. So I'm going to start off with just a real quick overview of what vulnerability management is. Vulnerability management is the practice of identifying, evaluating, prioritizing, and mitigating security vulnerabilities in systems, networks, and applications. I'm not going to do very much reading direct from slides if I can't help it. I only do this here or there when I'm doing very strict definitions, and there's no point in doing variations. It is important here for these next bullets that I'll be revisiting the context of these bullets. These are the key components of vulnerability management: to do discovery of assets and discovery of vulnerabilities, to understand and assess vulnerabilities when they're identified, their severity and the impact on the business, the prioritization and working out the prioritization of vulnerabilities that are identified and assessed, and place risk based on that, and then determining remediation, prioritizing remediation, and mitigating the vulnerabilities as they apply. Again, this is important as we go through the remainder of the slides to make correlations of where AI is coming and going in these four key components. So, traditional vulnerability management challenges. I bring these up because these are the things that we hope AI can help us with in the future, and what it can do actually today in some solutions. Manual processes, limited scalability, time-consuming analysis and prioritization, and reactive approaches. Manual processes are primarily the manual processes for doing such tasks as asset discovery, vulnerability scanning, remediation activities. The challenges within there is that the human error can have you overlook or do remediation that actually causes issues or interruptions of service. There's it's very resource intensive to do manual processes, that being in time and labor investment. And sometimes you can have results that are inconsistent or sometimes are applied differently, resulting in different types of findings depending on who's running it, when it was run, and other contexts that could lead to other types of inconsistencies when you're doing remediation or prioritization also. Limited scalability, the manual vulnerability management process struggles to scale effectively, especially in large or dynamic environments. The sheer number of assets across diverse networks can be very challenging without going through, or it would involve significant number of resources to keep up to date, managed, and understanding the dynamic environments can make it even harder if there's a lot of changes going on frequently. Time-consuming analysis and prioritization. You have the issue of analyzing and prioritizing vulnerabilities manually that can be quite time-consuming. This is usually is almost always due to the sheer volume of data, depending on the enterprise and the data that's coming in to your collectors and the like. And a lot of times, the other challenge with analysis is lack of context. May end up causing misreads or missing vulnerabilities that may be true or have the potential as a threat to your environment. And then restrictive approaches to security threats. Traditional vulnerability leads to trends to be reactive, addressing vulnerabilities after they've been exploited or become public knowledge. Can be really what it comes down to is there's always a window of when a vulnerability is first identified or may be identified, and then when it might, when you can actually, you yourself at your facilities can identify it, do the analysis to understand its impact, prioritize it, and deploying it can be a time lag. Within that time, a threat could be leveraged and actually become a realization within your environment. So being able to be more automated and more reactive would be quite the boon in these situations. And therein lies where AI and machine learning can help. I'm going to take a pause real fast, make sure I don't have any questions. Don't see any.
You're good.
On.
Yeah.
Okay. So the importance of this is my last thing before I actually get into AI directed discussions. This is the importance of proactive identification and mitigation. And for some, this may be a bit redundant, but these are important things to understand that these are where AI is really going to be able to help the most. Being very proactive is where it's going to truly shine. You're going to be able to address vulnerabilities before other times you might be able to find them. The challenge is always that if you're doing discovery in a traditional vulnerability management situation, the only way that you're proactive is doing scheduled periodic discovery of industry news and technology and software vendor sources that may be giving you updates, but it's not giving you the full picture, and it's not being as reactive as it could be in those environments to give more information that can be analyzed to understand if vulnerabilities are heading your way or not, or if you could be vulnerable to threats you didn't realize were out there. The cost savings directly relates to this. To be honest, it's really conveying here that if a threat does happen and is realized, your cost is recovering from an incident that may happen to you. And then a lot of companies nowadays that have any kind of regulations put forth for them, it is usually inherent that most regulatory requirements require that organizations be proactive in addressing possible vulnerabilities that may be facing. And AI will help them stay compliant to this and make it a lot easier to stay compliant to this in the future. All right, so I'm going to get into AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm going to start off with some basic definitions here in just a second. I have a quote here: artificial intelligence is the science of making machines do things that would require intelligence if done by humans. This is a quote by John McCarthy. He was a computer and cognitive scientist. He is one of the founders of the discipline of artificial intelligence, and he co-authored the original document that coined the term artificial intelligence, also known as AI. So my definitions here again. Artificial intelligence, the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, enabling them to learn, reason, and make decisions. Machine learning is a subset of the artificial intelligence that enables systems to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. The emerging impacts on vulnerability management will greatly improve automation tasks in enhancing detection capabilities and enabling predictive analysis for future threats. And that is the most important thing here, especially for the needs of realizing the requirements of zero trust, is making it predictive and automatic, or automating are two key components that without them, you're not truly achieving the full measure of what the zero trust practice and intention is. Moving along. So the role and benefits of AI in vulnerability management, I have actually 4 different items here to bring forth. The first one is automation of vulnerability scanning and detection. Again, that aligns to the key components of vulnerability management. AI can directly jump in for these. AI enables the automated vulnerability scanning and detection process, thereby reducing reliance on manual efforts. It becomes much more efficient, it's much more accurate, and you have a continuous process of monitoring for new vulnerabilities, understanding the changing threat landscapes. Advanced analytics for risk assessment. AI-powered analytics techniques provide deeper insights into vulnerability, severity, impact, and exploitability. In advanced analytics, you start to, AI can help understand contexts of possible assets, whether they're in the idea of what is being threatened and why. You can look for patterns of impact or potentials of types of vulnerabilities or threats that may be impacting your environment or could be impacting remote sites with other intentions and purposes, so you have greater context of what's going on in your environment. It is able to better prioritize your environment, not better than a person, but conceivably quite a bit faster once you've trained AI to understand the true impacts and the critical assets and the critical business functions in your environment. It can prioritize threats and where you should be putting and addressing vulnerabilities first, and then further on throughout. And understanding trends can have it start to do predictive capabilities and understanding where threats may emerge. The other 2 elements of the roles or benefits that AI can help with is going to be predictive modeling for future threats. So this is something that a lot of companies don't get into yet for vulnerability analysis, but this is understanding what's out there, what could be happening, what is being discussed in trades and industry discussions, and then doing scenario planning. AI will be very critical in being able to run those on demand and run them very, very quickly to understand new situations, new scenarios. If your business is changing or adding or evolving itself, that the scenarios can be adapted very quickly through AI. And then real-time threat intelligence integration, understanding threat intelligence feeds to vulnerability management processes. It's really the threat feeds that are going to be important that AI can consume quickly, do analysis on, and then present possible prioritizations for remediations. And then beyond that, you can even then include it depending on your environment, to actually conduct automation of remediation as well. I'm going to take another pause, make sure we don't have anything, questions here.
You're all good.
All right, sounds good. So AI vulnerability detection, I actually have a couple slides here. No, just the one here for vulnerability for the detection. Again, we had the four critical components of vulnerability management: discovery, assessment, prioritization, and remediation. We're talking about discovery at this point, or detection. So this actually blurs the line a little bit amongst them, but these are the primary functions we have going on. Machine learning is where I'm going to actually get into this a little bit more. I brought up the definition as I got into AI here, but you're going to see where machine learning itself plays a more significant role in the detection process, more than a lot of other things, more than the rest of the vulnerability management solutions and tasks that are conducted. So pattern recognition of network traffic, systems behavior, application code, the sheer processing time and capabilities of that, looking for anomalous behavior within those, flagging, bringing those forth as possible vulnerabilities, and then doing adaptive learning based on the results of what is happening and how anomalous detections are being responded to from the flags and the notifications of vulnerabilities as they're addressed. The deep learning techniques employs complex networks to automatically extract failures and learn conflicts representations of data. And in that context, it's looking for, it's using deep learning models. It's looking at the raw data, which can be quite time consuming and may not mean a lot to a lot of other people, but it's looking for patterns that can be in correlation to what was done in the machine learning algorithms, looking for the anomalies also. The relationships and complex relationships start to evolve to another level, that you start to look at possible context of systems, and I'm actually getting into the next column as well for application for NLP, natural language processing. Gets into semantic understanding of context related to I've got a note here just to make sure I got this right. Use of natural language processing, text analysis, computational linguistics, biometrics can also feed to systematically identifying, extracting, qualifying, and studying information that's being captured to understand if there are threats that are happening in a number of different ways that we don't even do today. This is quite a busy slide. I'm happy that we'll be sharing it, but these are very important points to understand about how AI can be involved in probably one of its most important aspects of doing the detection, is where AI should shine and will shine, even if automation doesn't become a part of it, and a lot of people are leery to give machines a free rein to do remediation without some sort of 4-eye review, so to speak. But the detection, identification, notification, and the analysis of threats should be where AI shines the most in vulnerability management. So the next area was the analysis and prioritization and getting into remediation to understand how AI can participate in this environment. Utilizing AI to prioritize the vulnerabilities. AI algorithms can be employed to prioritize vulnerabilities based on a various number of factors, including severity, impact on assets, exploitability, critical areas in your business, critical assets, and what impacts they may have on your business. So the vulnerability analysis is very precise. It understands and puts context to your assets and the threats of what's being attacked to be able to give you reasonable recommendations for prioritization, and then adaptive algorithms giving you learning from these threats and learning to further refine prioritization as time goes by. Automatic patch management and deployment is not necessarily a new thing in vulnerability management, but tying it to vulnerability analysis and responding accordingly from prioritizations is a bit more complex for companies now, and this process can be evolved, managed, and automated to a greater degree than we currently can really accomplish today normally. One other point for prioritization remediation is the integration with existing IT infrastructure. Understanding and working with workflows, this more of a greater centralization to AI platforms gives you your central dashboard, your central pane of glass that gives you management and critical core people with the best knowledge to be able to understand what's happening in their environment and be able to participate or green flag if you have waypoints or gateways that you introduce into the AI process that have to be approved before next steps can be done and prioritizations or outright remediation can proceed. And then customization becomes a whole lot easier if you are tailored to the workflows and the relation to your critical assets. Okay. Predictive analytics. Predictive analytics, again, ties back to something that we've touched on for a number of slides, but there's a few more points that should be brought forward on what's involved with the analytics. Leveraging the AI to analyze historical data and predict future vulnerabilities is going to be a big one. Learning from historical data, whether it's within the company itself or learning from published data from news sources or other vendor feeds of known vulnerabilities, other challenges, other impacts to industries might show other patterns. So it gives a whole lot of data-driven and insights. Let's see. The proactive measures to prevent emerging threats, threat prevention, rapid response, risk reduction are all key components of the benefits of where you can go and what can be accomplished with these. I'm not going to go to them in great detail, but the predictive analytics empower the organizations to take proactive measures to prevent emerging threats before they can be exploited, and that's really the key point of it all. And lastly, one other predictive analytic is scenario modeling. I brought it up before, but understanding potential attack vectors and new vectors that may be introduced because of changing environments. These models will help you outright for conducting risk assessments, understanding and adapting mitigation strategies as scenarios play out to understand how best to address critical assets and keep the core business functions maintained up and running without impact or with minimal impact. And then doing preparedness scenarios to understand how the mitigation strategy can be addressed and what personnel and staff can do for testing and further validations of response plans and incident response plans as well. A subset that gets pulled in, and there's 3 different components to this, is understanding your threat intelligence and being able to real-time consume this information and add it to your discovery and analysis process for any kind of discovery that's being done in your vulnerability management systems. Having algorithms that can aggregate data quickly from diverse sources, open feeds, dark web monitoring, other security research sources, using it in context to understand threat data, giving insights to specifics for companies, that's what's relevant for you and the threats to your specific assets and infrastructure. And then providing intelligible and actionable information to address threats, to be able to do timely responses and mitigation. You're also able to do monitoring at a global threat landscape to understand of real-time awareness of new threats that may be happening in other parts of the world. If they start rolling towards you, there's models that have been out there that have shown threats that have started in other parts of the world, and how they migrated over time to different and larger threats as time went on. Ransomware is one that people don't always realize that original ransomware was very big, started in Middle East countries where they've become very prominent at first. While other threats may have been going on, these were running in the background and starting to be more and more prevalent. You started to see them there more than a decade ago, more than 15 years ago. You were seeing these starting to show up there. They've gotten much more mature, but just understanding threats and how they evolve and where they're coming from, different parts of the world, give insight and better preparation for yourself on how you can be better protected potentially for threats as they start to change, either from different parts of the world or from one industry to another, as they may be adapted and evolved to. One was used as in one critical area in chemical sector and then jumps over to finance. Could be leveraging different elements just to understand these things and have these conveyed and understand how things are rolling is a big thing that AI can help you with in this context. Gives you your early warning, gives you your threat predictions. All that ties together with really the messages that I've been trying to convey here. And lastly, giving once all these things have been monitored, once they've been identified, being able to plan rapid responses to new vulnerabilities and exploits, doing the automatic detection, doing dynamic remediation where allowed and possible, and adaptive defense, whether it's done additionally further through an automated process or through a manual process, gives you overall a better standing and a better preparedness for what may come your way. Any questions?
So we do. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to segue into starting to bring towards some conclusions, but you go ahead first, please.
Yeah. So we got actually some questions that came into the chat earlier. If you want to pull those up, or I can read them to you if you prefer. The most recent one that came into the chat was, is AI being built into Cisco Talos or Splunk?
That is a very good question. The problem, and I do believe I've been reading that is true, especially for the larger identification processes that we've been talking about. I do not have the current state of that to give you an explicit answer, but I do know that is being worked on. Obviously, it's a number of elements of programming for the algorithms that identifying all the threat sources that it can pull together, just as a lot of the different elements we've talked about, specifically being adapted to the technology. Cisco would be remiss if we weren't actually going down a lot of the things that we've been talking about here. But I can't give you the specifics, and we would be happy to point a product specialist that could give you a better answer than what I just gave you.
Awesome, thank you. And then just a follow up on that. Oh, not necessarily follow up, but another one that was mentioned earlier is, can you elaborate more about the journey of
Uh,
AI?
yes, of course. The uh, the journey of vulnerability management with AI is going to, uh, I'll bring up one of these. It's usually better just to keep me honest here with the key components of vulnerability management, how AI is pulling into these, keeping this core components list in the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about what AI can do for you. Keeps things direct for context of what's happening and actually where you would start to introduce these things. The core end for zero trust is to achieve automation and be predictive, so that automation can be even more proactive. But to introduce the evolution of how AI and customers will inevitably start to introduce AI more and more into their environment to address vulnerability management is going to go pretty much in the order that these components are listed here. The discovery process, the automation process, whether it's at a global level or other threat sources, or either learning from your own internal information as to how you address the threats and the like, as you build out automated predictive models to be able to automate the identification of vulnerabilities and threats, and then taking that to be able to evaluate identified threats would be the next step, and then presenting those threats as a prioritization that's been customized to your business to understand your critical assets first, business functions first, and how the impacts of vulnerabilities affect those specific systems and your workflows. Therein is the natural progression that you would go. First, getting the better tools that give you better insight, better knowledge, helping you do the analysis of the vulnerabilities and the input and the other data that you're getting, being able to run the analysis on the sheer raw data that you're gaining from your discovery processes, your scans of your systems, the monitoring of your traffic flows, the monitoring of your systems that you have, all that raw data. It's all that analysis and discovery work is where AI will probably first be able to shine best. And even in the long term, it's going to be one of the biggest functions, biggest values that AI gives you. Is just going through it all and distilling it down to something that actually means something to you, something that means something explicit for you and your company, and be able to react accordingly and very precisely to the needs to address possible vulnerabilities. The rest of it is the natural progression. You would go from there, getting into taking that prioritization and then automating it, doing the remediation. And there are tools that do that today, but they're still very explicit for the control and management from your security professionals that you have that are monitoring and managing your network and looking for security issues, and then pulling the triggers when they're deemed appropriate for remediation. Otherwise, the only real automatic remediation a lot of companies may have is from vulnerability scanning that would either automatically isolate either systems or networks. Those kind of things can see attacks possibly happening, and that's your most traditional today automatic remediation that you would normally see. Getting into larger automatic remediation that actually is starting to automatically address patches or changing settings in systems or network settings based on possible threats is a different thing, and it's much more complex. And change management usually is today and will be further needs to be more tied into where AI does with all this. But remediation will be its own beast, so to speak. But that'll be overall the natural progression from the discovery, the assessment, prioritization, and then finally the automation remediation. I think that probably addressed the question, but I probably went a little longer than I should have for it. But I think that probably answers it for you. What else have we got?
All right. So there is a question about if they're going to have access to the slide deck, and yes, I will provide that as a
Yep.
download. Thank you very much for that. And then, you know what? Let's go ahead and continue, and then we can follow up majority of these questions during the Q&A portion of our session.
All right, sounds good. So when you're ready, when you are moving forward with AI, there's some things and notes that I've included here for the end of this presentation I would throw out. Implementation considerations. Obviously, integration with existing security infrastructure is going to be key to be able to introduce it and move it forward. Tying it into your security information and event management system, your ticketing system, will be important to be able to take the analysis and discovery that the AI is doing and presenting it, pulling it forward and presenting it to your personnel. Making sure it's compatible, diverse, including what's on-prem, cloud, hybrid deployments, and any other third-party solutions that may be being contracted to do different types of services for you, which is quite common for a lot of companies today. They're outsourcing a number of their functions and be able to tie those in as well. Bringing in compliance considerations, whatever they may be. I'm not going to go into great detail for those to be cognizant of my time that we have, but there's a lot of data that needs to be available, the protection measures that are included in regulations and data privacy requirements, making sure that those controls are in place. AI surprisingly can help make sure that is maintained and be able to look for events where data has become available in areas that it shouldn't be, or has become visible or viewable where it shouldn't be possible. AI can even help present in those capabilities as well, is where they're trying to go with this. And then training and skill development is going to be pretty much a given. Bring teams up to speed to utilize AI for vulnerability management will be a training exercise. And then bringing in the security professionals to have a collaboration to be able to properly leverage AI is something that can be a challenge. This consideration that you should always pull forward and be cognizant of. Additionally, move forward. Shareholder buy-in is going to be a bigger deal. I'm not going to go into a great deal with that. Vendor selection and evaluation will always be a consideration, and risk assessment and mitigations of implementing AI into your environment always has to be conducted and understood. I brought these up, and these are pretty straightforward things. The deck will be available to you to look at them, but my final slide here, a couple slides, 2 slides actually. When getting into AI, there are some challenges, and that I would be remiss if I didn't bring forward. The evolving techniques of AI is still changing today, but the AI is capable of so much more in understanding context, and we'll be able to analyze data in ways that we pretty much don't today, to look for possible threats from a number of different vectors. And not all of them are even through the network. AI based on, and also I should also mention that there are ethical and bias concerns when you get into AI. And I'm going to keep these 3 bullets. I'm going to pretty much be close to read them, and I think it's important to bring them up. That as AI becomes more pervasive in vulnerability management, there are concerns about potential biases in AI algorithms. The biases in training data, and that is the data that goes into build the data that the algorithms use and leverage against for decisions and information that it presents, could be misleading, it could be unfair in prioritizations and vulnerabilities. So there's something that when you get into AI, you'll need to be cognizant of the systems you use, and your testing processes are not just for one type of accuracy, but looking for possibilities of misrepresentation of data that it is conveying. So there is a testing process and a reevaluation process that should be periodically done when you're using AI databases and using the results that are coming from AI presentation of prioritizations and other information that they present to you. Fairness, transparency, accountability of AI systems is critical to address these concerns and always to be able to maintain the trust in the AI systems that you're using. And finally, these I won't go into great detail. We're right coming up to the point that I wanted to be able to start any further Q&A. Yes, AI is going to revolutionize vulnerability management. The possibility of vulnerability detection, prioritization, remediation is powerful. You'll be able to do so much more and keep accurate responses, understanding the threats more clearly, and be able to more agilely, more proactively address the risks. Of course, there's always going to be an encouragement for adoption, but it should always be measured against what the value is to the company versus, of course, your expenditures and the like, but understand the impacts and how it can better support your business's missions and keep your assets safe and your data safe. With that, I'm going to end it.
Awesome. So at this time, feel free to go ahead. If you have a question for Hank, feel free to put it into the Q&A panel and we'll get those answered accordingly. So Hank, going back to the beginning, there was a question about what is the major difference between CISA and ZTA? Would you be able to speak on that?
No, not at this time.
Not at this time.
I'm missing the context of it, so I don't want to misstate my response.
Gotcha. There was another question, but I think it would kind of lean on the same thing about what's the difference between VPN and ZTA. But
I'm sorry, I might be able to answer that. What was it again?
Oh, so it was just what's the difference between VPN and ZTA?
So CISA is a well-documented process that has come out with zero trust principles, zero trust architecture approaches. They all come down to models of and I'm going to change the slide here real fast. I do have it prepared of accomplishing zero trust. Different, can you see my slide change to zero trust capabilities?
Yes.
But CISA, I don't have that slide up, but they have a similar set of pillars. Cisco ZTA has these set of pillars. The difference in these is there's groups of capabilities, controls, practices for what Cisco refers to as zero trust capabilities. And if you're doing zero trust, you're addressing each of these groups of capabilities in one fashion or another. I'm not saying every single one of these capabilities is enacted, but something from each one of these categories of capabilities is drawn upon or reflected upon when you're doing zero trust at the network layer, at the system layer, at the endpoint layer, at the transport layer. All of these are part of it. And what we've been discussing today are elements that are focused in the vulnerability management area. The CISA, they refer to these as pillars as opposed to capability groups that Cisco, oops, sorry, let me go back. That as opposed to what Cisco uses for these capability groupings or categories. So that's really the difference between those two. And maybe that starts to get into the question prior to that. Again, I didn't fully understand the prior question, but this may have actually started to answer one of the others. And if somebody wanted to put the clarification further, I'd be happy to go back to even that first question. But this, I believe, answers the question between the difference between CSA and the other. Gartner Group has produced others. There's at least a dozen different groups that have put out different elements of zero trust pillars and groupings. They're all similar in this context. Cisco has put them this way. We feel that these groupings of capabilities are best from practical deployment perspective on executing zero trust. Others, they've moved some of these controls around a little bit. The titles are a little bit different. And CISA has their pillars, and they're true. They're accurate in what they're talking about. But Cisco presents ours, and we present it in the Zero Trust Architecture book with the same capabilities here. And that is because we feel this is the best approach to these capabilities to deploy zero trust in a practical execution.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Moving on to our next question. How can we measure the effectiveness of predictive analytics? In other words, how do we break down and justify the operating costs of predictive analytics? How do we quantify and qualify the future potential and real vulnerabilities not being exploitable as a result of it?
Excellent question. And we probably wouldn't have enough time to fully explore all the different aspects of that to really pull it all the way through to, I think, fully answer the question. But I would say when you're doing cost justification for this kind of thing, your scenarios that are going to be, if you have all these tools already immediately available to you, running scenarios and understanding impacts from running these risk analysis and scenario impacts would be one of the easiest ways that would come down to understand, because you could then identify assets, interruption of service, and be able to quickly quantify dollars that could be balanced against the effect of leveraging AI tools and what they could do to help identify and have muted, if not outright prevented, an event to happen within your environment. It's almost, from a vulnerability management perspective, any investment you do for vulnerability management, even today, or whether you introduce the additions of AI capabilities, is always going to be the prevention of interruption of downtime, interruption of business services, interruption of production, interruption of being able to service your customers, or service the customers to be able to get product and or information from whatever business that you run. Then there's others in production that you could cause outright damage, others in production that could cause threat to life and limb. So the numbers can be evaluated and cost effective very quickly. But the bottom line is that what's happening and is advocated in Zero Trust is to introduce more proactive capabilities more than reactive capabilities to address possible threats and vulnerabilities, to know what's coming and be able to stop what's coming so it doesn't affect you, is the value that you put onto that. And that's going to vary from business to business and customer to customer on what those numbers apply to. But it's always going to be, if I could have prevented this, if I could have prevented for the healthcare industry and all this, what happened to a number of hospital chains that got hit from the ransomware attacks, the pharmaceutical that was out there that lost all data and had to rebuild over 12,000 servers. And during that time, if they said if they got hit again with it as bad, the possibility of availability of drugs for what they sold would be threatened. So patients wouldn't have been able to necessarily get the drugs that they needed. Those are the kind of impacts that are measured out there, and all of this could be and can be addressed if you're being more proactive, preemptive, and future looking at the possible data that's out there and being able to respond and remediate quickly. That is the bigger thing. Like I said, this particular question could be delved into and go into very big specifics or very deep specifics. And as a result, I think that's the best that I can answer that I can give you now. But if you wanted to follow up with me later and follow this thread a whole lot more, I'd be happy to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. I placed the post-event discussion thread, so if you want to follow up there as well, it's on the Cisco Learning Network. We do encourage you to jump on and ask further questions. All right, moving on to our next question is Cisco Duo, compared to other platforms such as Splunk, a more suitable choice that provides the mentioned AI functionalities uh, mentioned during the session?
Uh, they both have a different function, one being more of access control on Splunk, of identifying analysis of data. So they'd have different functions in the overall process. The tie into them would be a great boon in being able to tie that in further to AI to understand what's happening between them. But the Duo is an access management tool versus Splunk, which is a different tool in and of itself. Can you give me a little bit more, or give me that question a little bit more, make sure I answered? Yeah, I didn't miss some nuance of that.
Yeah, so again, if you want to follow up on that question, feel free to go ahead and post it into the chat and we can go further and provide some additional information. But let's see here. Yeah, I think you covered, but again, if it needs more clarity, feel free to go ahead and clarify using the chat. Thank you. Okay. Next question I have here is, where and how does AI-driven vulnerability management fit into ZTA?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Sure. Where and how does AI-driven vulnerability management fit into the Zero Trust architecture?
I'm going to pull back that slide again. So again, these pillars, and I'm going to start here to answer the question, in that all of these all of these different 5 categories of capabilities are the total picture of what ZTA or Cisco Zero Trust architecture is built on, their foundations, its own pillars, so to speak. The policy and governance, identity, vulnerability management, enforcement, and analytics. The focus of today, I actually didn't dive into this as we discuss in the book of vulnerability management in and of itself. I built in where vulnerability management is starting to adapt and what AI may be impacting what these tools do today. Endpoint protection, malware prevention and inspection, vulnerability management tools, the scanning tools, the databases, the database monitoring, the database changes, database management, data protection, all of those that are well, actually protection goes into other areas of enforcement, but to this end, I think I'm going where this question wanted to be. Where is it in the Zero Trust? This is the bigger picture, and it's these kind of tools that AI in vulnerability management is going to affect, and more actually, because we've discussed other type of analysis tools, and the remediation tools are not really even properly listed here, to be honest, that are out there now to be able to automate remediation, whether it's patching, whether it's adjustments to access list controls, or what it may be, or even changes to IDS settings to be able to properly identify new threats that may be that wasn't out there before, to more proactively do tuning to IDS or IPS may be a possibility for AI as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. So, Hank, I believe we've covered all the questions that I see. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I really have just scratched the surface on what it can be and what it will be. I just wanted to introduce the concepts today that it is going to change the picture of what vulnerability management can do. And it is going to evolve what you can see and do and more truly come to what CISA and what Cisco and what others define as zero trust and what that truly means to a business. We'll make it more real and more proactive, and that's really the biggest thing, is to make your overall business and your data more secure. So I'll leave it at
Perfect.
that.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Hank, our panelists, and the whole team for bringing your knowledge to the Cisco community. Again, if you have a question, I'll keep the Q&A window open for a couple more minutes. I've also placed the link to post the post-event discussion thread on the Cisco Learning Network, so we do encourage you to continue the conversation there. Bookmark that link because we'll also provide the link to where you can download a PDF copy of today's presentation along with where the recording, I believe the YouTube live stream link will be posted there momentarily, so you can review playback immediately. And then as far as the edited version of today's session, that will be uploaded to the Cisco Learning Network, and that typically takes 3 to 5 business days. Um, Thank you again. Your feedback is important, and at this time, you'll be directed to a survey. So we do encourage you to take the time to participate in that. Once again, we thank everyone for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the Cisco Learning Network.